In this video, we're going to look at the definition of a parallelogram, and we're also going to look at some of the properties of a parallelogram. So first of all, it's important to know the definition. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral, so a quadrilateral has four sides, and the opposite sides have to be parallel. So if we have that going in that direction, that is also going in that direction, they're parallel, and this line here is parallel to this line. So that is all that has to happen initially to define a parallelogram. But from that, there's some properties that follow, and I'm going to go through 4 of them in this video. So the first property I want to talk about is the fact that opposite sides of a parallelogram are always congruent. So opposite sides, let's write shortcut, up sides, are always congruent. So not only then are these two sides parallel to each other, their measurement is going to be equal to each other. And in this case, not only are these two sides parallel to each other, their measurements will also be equal to each other. So that's one pretty important property of a parallelogram. All right, the second property that I want to talk about is the fact that in a parallelogram, the opposite angles are always congruent. So let's write that down. Opposite angles, congruent. So for example, well, we have an angle here, which is opposite that angle. So they're opposite because they're not connected at all. They're completely on the opposite sides of the parallelogram. All right, so those will always be equal in measurement. And same here, that will be equal in measurement to that. So that is one also very important property of a parallelogram. All right, let's look at the third property. Okay, so the third property of a parallelogram is the fact that consecutive angles are supplementary. So you may recall supplementary means that they add up to 180 degrees. All right, so in order to make this point clear, I'm going to have to give this some angle names. So we have A, B, C, D here. So for opposite angles to be supplementary in this case, that would mean that A plus B is equal to, well, 180, and C plus D, because they are opposite, is also equal to 180. All right, so the last property that we're going to look at before we actually use this information to solve a problem is the fact that if we have a parallelogram with one right angle, so I'm going to draw that here so we can see it. All right, so let's say we have a parallelogram with one right angle. From what we just learned, we know that opposite angles are equal, which means that we have another right angle right here. We also know from what we just learned that consecutive angles are going to be supplementary, which means that this angle plus this angle has to add up to 180, which means this angle, since it's 90, and this angle, well, has to add up to 180, which means that this is also 90 degrees. And we have those 3 90-degree angles, and we can think of this in several different ways. The sum of the angles in a quadrilateral is 360, for example, or we can think of it as opposite angles are equal, or we can think of it as consecutive angles are supplementary. However you slice this cake, we know that this fourth angle is 90 degrees. So the fourth property that I wanted to talk about is the fact that if you have one right angle, then you have 4 right angles. There's no give or take. So if one angle is right, all angles are right. All right, so now that we know this, we can actually try a problem. Okay, so here in this example, we have a parallelogram, and angle A is 55 degrees, side AB is 2.5 feet, and side BC is 1 foot. And we're being asked to find certain angles and certain measurements. All right, so the first thing I would do personally is to fill in the information that we have been given. So we know again that angle A is 55 degrees. So I'm going to write that here, 55 degrees. And we know that side AB is 2.5 feet, so I'm going to put that here. And we know BC is 1 foot, so I can put that right here. All right, now from here, well, we are being asked for specific things, but I'm actually going to go ahead and find everything because it's actually not that hard. We know that opposite sides are supposed to be congruent, which means that since this here is 1 foot, then this here is also 1 foot. So I will label that in blue. So we know that that's something we found. Again, opposite sides are congruent, so since this is 2.5 feet, that means this is also 2.5 feet. So we have 2.5 feet right here. All right, we know opposite angles are also congruent. So since this is 55 degrees, this here is also 55 degrees. So we can put that in, very tiny. All right, and we also know finally that consecutive angles are supplementary to each other. So this angle here plus this unknown angle here have to add up to 180 degrees, which means that if we want to find angle, well, let's say angle B. If we want to find angle B, we know that this angle and this angle, when you add them, they're supplementary. It's 180. So we can go ahead and in order to find angle B, we would do 180 minus 55, and we would get that it is equal to 125 degrees. So that's 125 degrees, and that also is 125 degrees. So now we can go ahead and fill in our answers. DC, as you can see, is going to be 2.5 feet. We just found that angle B is 125 degrees, and angle C is going to be 55 degrees. And that's how we work with parallelograms. Stay tuned for the next video, because in the next video we're going to look at the diagonals of parallelograms. All right, that's it.